All right, posts and comments. Yeah, so this was a challenge just getting you used to the front end of Django and also tying it to the back end, kind of having something you can see on a web page and interact with some data and click some links and see everything working. So yeah, all right, so I've checked this out. I have it on my local machine. So let's actually get started. Again, we're gonna go through the motions of creating a Django project and getting it up and running. So this is a case where we don't actually give you a project. We want you to create from scratch. So that's what we're going to do here. All right, so just walking through all the steps that we had to go through. I'm going to bring up my terminal. First step, as we always recommend, is to create a virtual environment. So I'm going to go through that, python-m, vnv, and let's call this, I'll call it virtual. Just change up my names, virtual. All right, it's doing its thing. It created a virtual folder. All right, it finished. Sorry. Can't handle Zoom. Okay, so, all right, now I want to get into my virtual environment. So I'm going to do source, virtual, which is the name of my virtual environment, bin, and activate. All right, great. So I'm in my virtual environment. Again, looking at my terminal, I'm prepended with virtual, which is the name of my virtual environment. So I'm good to go. I'm going to clear here. All right, so again, usually when we have in the past provided you with projects, we gave you requirements.txt, and that contained all the modules that we wanted you to install. In this case, we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to have to install Django myself. So I'm going to do pip install Django. It's going to do its thing. You get the latest version of Django. So that's 3.17 looks like. All right, a few other packages got installed. All right, cool. That worked. I got some notice that I'm going to ignore. All right, and then next thing I want to do is install Psycopg, because that is something that Django requires for working with Postgres. So I'm going to install that right now also. Install Psycopg 2. All right, cool. So I've got both those installed. It seems everything worked well. One thing I'm going to do right off the bat is kind of add a Git Ignore. So let's do new file, Git Ignore. And I don't want my virtual environment in here, so I'm just going to do virtual this and save it. So that should ignore that folder. All right, and then let's continue on. All right, so now I've got Django installed. I've got Psycopg installed. What's my next step? Let's kind of pull the audience. Who do I have here? Jose, you're first on my screen. Jose, all right, so I've got Django installed. I want to create a Django project. How do I go about doing that?
You have to make your, you have to make your migrations into that.
Before migrations, I want to just create my project. So looking at my folders, I only have virtual. It was my virtual environment.
I'm not good with the steps.
That's fine.
Go back to the end of the text.
That's cool. Yeah, we're still kind of new to this. So again, with more practice, it'll become more familiar. So to create a project, I'm going to type Django-admin and then start project. If I can type correctly. Start project. And then I want to give my project name. So in this case, I'm going to call it, let's call it posts proj. And then again, this is something I mentioned before, but if you give your project name and put a period after that, it's not going to create those nested folders. So that's something I don't like having nested folders. So I always use the period. You don't have to. If you don't, you'll get just a nested folder with post project and another post project folder in there. I'm going to run that. All right, cool. Got no errors. Notice I got my post project created here. So if you look in there, you have your settings.py and a few other files. So it looks like that got created well. All right, now that I've created my project, I want to create my app. So Taylor, you are second on my screen. Could you tell me how I can create a Django app in my project?
You're going to do python manage.py, start app, and then your app name?
Absolutely. So I have python manage.py, which manage.py, we basically use that for everything once we have a project created. I'm going to do start app, as Taylor said, and then give my app a name. So let's call it posts for lack of creativity. And I didn't have space. All right, posts. All right, cool. That seemed to work well. I got my post folder here. Has other files in it. Again, we have our views, models, stuff we're going to want to populate. All right, so let me clear my terminal. Let's go back to our README. Let's see how we're progressing. All right, so release 0, I think that's what we just accomplished. We set up our Django project and app, but we need to register something. So these are extra steps that you just got to remember to do. If you don't, you'll probably get some errors down the line. So when you create an app, always good practice to go into your settings pie for your project folder and find your installed apps and append your app to it. So in this case, my app is called Posts. So I'm just going to add that here. Save that. And then also, I know I'm going to be using a Postgres database. So I'm actually going to update my settings pie database section here. So I'm going to change SQLite. I want to use Postgres SQL. All right, so type that in here. And then I'm going to create my database name. So I haven't created my database yet. I'm going to create my name. Is there a comment there? All right, hopefully I don't have a name or a database with this name already. So call it post_db and save that. So my settings file is saved, but again, keep in mind, this is just saying I'm pointing to a database, but I actually got to create that database in order to use it. So that's something I'm going to do now before I forget. So I'm going to do create DB. Again, this is Postgres, and then I'll name it post_db. Give that a run. Cool. Seems like there's no error. So my database got created. I've told my settings file that where to look for my database. And I've also told my settings file what app I've created. So now that's linked to my project, and I think I'm good to go.
Hey, Encore, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is one of the points that kind of confused me, so maybe it's confused other people. Is that all you need for that database? Because in the documentation, it says you need a bunch of other things like user, password, host, and port. And so if that works, then that's great, but I was confused there, so.
Yeah, so those other extra fields, I've not run into issues where I definitely need to add them. I think those are additional configurable options. For example, if you require a password, like entering a password to get into your database, you will need to specify it, probably a username and a password here. But like the way I've configured my Postgres, I already have like those permissions by default, so I don't need to enter a password each time I'm going into my database. If you're constantly running into that where it's asking for a password, we could probably figure that out and figure out how to set up Postgres so it automatically is authenticated for use on your machine. But yeah, for the most part, you should only have to enter your database type and your database name, and that should work. Right? But yeah, if you're running into additional issues, we should definitely touch base later. All right, so I created my database. I'm good to go. So I'm actually gonna just add my files to Git. So I'm gonna do git add and then git commit. Always get the commit incrementally. So in this case, I would say release 0, created proj and app. All right, and that added a bunch of stuff. All right, clear this. Okay, so now that I have my database, I want to make my migration. So again, this is something that you need to do whenever you create your database. It has no data in it. So through Django, you can make migrations, which basically creates files for updating your database, and then you got to actually migrate those changes. So in this case, I haven't created any models in my posts. So let's actually do that now. So I'm going to my, again, this is my app, post is my app. I'm going to my models.py file. I'm going to create a couple models. So let's look at what release 1 is about. So create your routes. All right, so we're going to need models. It doesn't say that specifically here. Okay, that's release 2. All right, let's go step by step then. Let's go release 1, set up our URLs. So your routes in URL pies should have that and that. Okay, so setting up our URLs, again, it's a two-step process. Step 1 is to go to your project folder and go into urls.py. And this will have some stuff in it. There's these comments. I'm just gonna quickly delete that to save space. All right, so by default, you should see this default path with admin. And we can actually talk about this maybe after lunch, because we don't want to spend too much time on it. But there's actually an admin panel that we have access through Django. And it's actually really convenient. You could add items, you can manage your data. It's quite user-friendly, so we could cover that at some point. But for now, I need to add a path to my project, or sorry, to my app. In that case, my app is called Posts. I'm just going to give that URL. Again, I can name this whatever. So since my app is named Post, I usually will just give it the same name, but I can name this like Twitter. You know, if we're creating posts and comments, this could be a Twitter URL if you want to give that. But let's just call it Post. Just be simple. All right. So what do we need to do now? We need to tie this to our URL for our app here. So to do that, we need to, I think, include here. Sorry, let me get my files corrected here. All right, so we need to include that and then use that include. So include will basically let us point to where we want to.
You have a typo and include in the import.
That is very butchered. All right, include. We're going to use that and then post.url. So again, post, this has to be post because that's our app name. Again, this can be anything else. So I guess just to try it out, let's use Twitter. Hopefully they don't mind us acquiring their name. So we have Twitter there, and then we have post as our app. All right, and that posts posts.urls. So this is actually going to look in the posts module, which is this folder, and then look for URLs, which is the file right here. Sorry, not there. We need to create a URL. So that's our next step here. So in our post app, we want to create a new file called urls.py. All right, so again, in our URLs from our project, we're pointing to post.urls, and that's what we actually got to create. By default, Django does not create that for us. I'm not quite sure why. Well, let's actually go here. Okay, nothing here, so we got to add some code here. All right, so I'm actually going to copy what I had in my project URLs and work off of that. So copy this, paste this here, so I have all my includes. I don't want the admin here. And then I'm going to create a blank entry here. So what this effectively is doing, having a blank entry here, is going to say, when I navigate to my project, Twitter, and slash, I don't want to add anything extra to it. So in that case, the default path will go to wherever I want it to go. So in this case, I will say views.index, perhaps, and then give it a name. Give that a name of all posts, or let's say posts. All right, so we have a name, and we'll see this name in use when we're linking to files in our HTML templates. Well, let's add a few more paths. So all right, so we're gonna have, just kind of model this out, we're gonna have a list of posts that we can see, and then when we click on a post, we should be able to see what's actually in that post. We wanna see the title and the author maybe, and then the content. So let's actually create a page for that. So in this case, we're gonna have a parameter that takes post ID. All right, so this is actually gonna be a parameter. So this could be various integers in this case, because I specified int, and this will capture every URL that has an int appended to the base URL. And this will navigate, let's say, to views.post detail. And let's name that appropriately post detail. Okay, and then let's add one more. So actually, I'm gonna just stop right here. I don't want to get too complicated. So we're just gonna have a list, and then we can view some post detail. All right, so that's setting up our URLs. Notice that we're pointing to views, so we're gonna actually add these methods to our views. So index is what I called one of them, and post detail. So I'm actually want to change the name of index to maybe like post list. Plural. All right, so post list as a method I'll need in my views, and also post detail. So let's actually get working on our views. So again, in your apps folder, we have a views.py file already created for us. So we can start coding there. Okay, so let's create our methods. So we need I believe this post list, and that's going to take in a request. So this is a parameter that it's going to require for this method. Otherwise, it's not going to work correctly. So this request is going to come from when we're navigating through the web page. There'll be a request parameter passed here, and then we're going to want to return something. So in this case, let's just return something very simple to just see this running. So let's do from Django.http.
Ankur, does your post list, the def post list method, does that refer to the views.postlist because one of them's plural, one of them's not.
Yep. Thank you so much. You guys are good at catching those errors. HTTP response. Yep. And then let's just return an HTTP response. See if that works. All right. So post lists and post list. All right. That looks good. All right. Cool. Let's actually test this out. So I'm gonna quickly do Python manage.py, and then make migration.
Or do you need a backslash after your int post ID
Post ID.
in the URLs
Okay.
folder? Yeah.
Yeah, I think chat alerts that's probably an error that half of us is going to make. So I think I fall into that bucket. Thanks for that. Let's do make migration. Post. And I got some errors. Views not defined. So what's going on there? So I need to include views here, I think. Yep. So from posts, import views. All right, so I actually need to tell it where this views object is coming from. It's not going to magically know that. That's the error I got from that. Let's see if this works. All right. So it's looking for a method that's not defined. So let's quickly define it to make it happy. So we do post detail request. In this case, I'm just going to pass right now. So pass again just says there's nothing in this body, but you need that so that this function has some definition. Okay, no changes because I haven't actually added models to my app, so there's nothing it needs to do, but I'm going to do Python manage migrate. So there's some default Django stuff that needs to dump into our database. Put it in my terminal. All right, let's actually run our server and see if we can actually get this hello world page. If we run into errors, we'll deal with that. So let's do Python manage.py and run server. Again, this will start up our server. That port is already in use. That is not what I want to see. All right, let's try that again. All right, there we go. Okay, so our server's up. Now we can actually connect to it. So I'm going to bring up a web page. So let's bring up Chrome. We can see that here. All right, here's our web page. Let's blow it up a bit. And go to localhost 8000. All right, so I think we called it Twitter. So let's see if we actually get to Twitter. All right, there we go. Hello world. Again, just walking through these steps. My coding window has left me. Where'd you go, coding window? All right, I've lost my coding window. All right, there we are. Where were you? I don't know where I went. All right, so just to walk through those steps, just to connect all the dots, we created a URLs path. So in our project folder, there's a urls.py. We specified the URL that's going to map to our posts app. So in this case, we call it Twitter. Again, you can call it whatever you want. But it's basically finding, hey, the user navigated to /Twitter. So then we're going to go into our post URLs and investigate in there. So for that, we created a new file in our app called urls.py and get some definition. So in this case, a blank just means that Twitter, it's a base URL. That's going to go to our post list, views.post list. So in our views file, this is a file that already existed, but we had to populate with some methods. We returned an HTTP response that said hello world. So that's actually how we got from taking the URL, navigating it, parsing a request. In this case, we're not actually using our request, and then returning a response. So that response goes back to the browser, and we see hello world.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
In your, I guess your app URLs file, do you know like what's the point of declaring the app name variable? Because like in the other challenge, above the URL patterns, you declare the app name equals whatever your app name is.
Absolutely, good question. So this is going to come into play when we're actually linking from our template HTML files. So we will use posts. You'll see something like posts : or whatever your app name is. post colon and then the name. So this name parameter that I've given will be used with this app name within our HTML files. All right, a good question. That if I don't cover that, definitely ping me on again. But when we create our template HTML files, you'll see this in play. All right, cool. I'm actually gonna pause the recording here. So,
sorry, could you go back to your projects?
all right, so we've coded up release 0, which is creating our Django project and Django app. We've started to create our URLs. So we created a sample posts location. So again, if I have my web page up, right now we're just displaying hello world, but obviously we want to be displaying something a little more useful or actual content. So yeah, let's actually try to get that going.
You're not sharing your screen right now.
Oh. Share that. Can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you for that. I always seem to miss a step. All right, so yeah, we've coded up our sample landing page, which says hello world, and we want to add more functionality to it. So I'm gonna go back to my views and notice we're just passing a default response. We're not even using the request. But for our list, we just know we wanna list all the books, or sorry, all the comments that we have, all the posts that we have in our database. So currently we have no data. So we gotta go alleviate that somehow. So let's actually add some data to our database. So let's go to our models. All right, so we need some models first. All right, so I'm going to create a post model. Again, we need to inherit from models.model. Don't forget that. And then we could kind of add some fields here. So if I'm thinking about a post usually will have a title. So let's add a title. That'll be models.char field. And let's say max length. Let's keep it 128, something decent. And then we're going to have some content. So let's say the post body, we'll call it, is models.char field. And this could be a little longer. So let's make that 124. All right. I figure a post probably has an author, so let's have an author item. So I guess if I wanted to make this more extended, I would create maybe a user model and actually tie that here. But in this case, I'm just going to create a text field for it. So you can just enter in your name. We're not going to have users with our current project, but we could always add that later. So char field, and this will just be max length. Let's keep that 64. All right, so our post just has a title, body, and author. I'm going to keep in mind that I'm probably going to be displaying this somewhere. So I'm going to add my str method here. Again, this is for display purposes. When we actually display a post object, it'll look for a str method, and if one exists, it'll use that to render our object. So this will take in self. And here we'll return something that's a little more easier to read. So in this case, let's just return our title. Let's go self.title. And let's actually add in an author name to by self.author. Okay, so I've done that. Kind of just getting ahead of myself here. I'm going to actually add a model for comments because that's actually me part of our model also. So let's do class comments, and this will be our model. All right, so comments, I would say that should have some content. So we'll just say content, models.char field, max one. Let's see, make comments kind of short. So we'll say 256, just random numbers here. And then we actually have a post that this will tie to. So this is where we'll actually use a foreign key. So we'll see models.foreign key. Again, so we're going to have a one-to-many relationship here in that a post can have many comments on it, but a single comment can't be attributed to multiple posts. So that's why a foreign key makes sense in this case. So that'll be a foreign key to a post. We're going to do our onDelete the models.cascade. And let's give a related name. So the related name would be comment. Okay, so this will basically allow us to access all the comments from a single post if we want to, just through the magic of Django. All right, so we have our two models here. I don't think.
Real quick.
Yep.
To access all those comments, can you just what that variable would look like?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll actually show it as I write some seed data.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. But yeah, thanks for that request. All right. So I added an author also. This will be a commenter. So let's just make a commenter. I'll probably forget these names later, but oh well. All right, and then let's add our str method also, because I'll be displaying this somewhere on my web page, I assume. So this would be content by commenter. Okay, so I'll create my T there. All right, I think this looks good. Hopefully I have no typos, but knowing me, I'd probably have one somewhere stuck in there. All right, now that I actually have my models created, I want to push that to a database. So I'm going to go do python.manage.py, not manage.py, and I'm going to do make migrations. And again, I want to add my app name. So my app name is post in this case. Okay, so created a model for post, created a model for comment, no errors so far, so hopeful that this will work fine. Now I actually want to migrate those changes. So what this did was create an actual file with those migration data. So if you go to your migrations folder in your app, you'll see that 0001 initial. This is going to have a bunch of SQL in it. So if you actually want to, is it SQL? No, it's not SQL. I thought it'd be SQL, but it's just data for actually adding your files. At some point, it will convert to SQL, but this file, it's not how that SQL in that. All right, so now that that's created, I'm going to migrate that. So hit enter. Okay, cool. Seems like everything was applied correctly. Looks good. All right, let's actually add some sample data to our database. So I'm going to create a new file actually. Call that seed.py. Seeds. Okay, let me actually move that out here. All right, so here I just want to use my models. So I'm going to do from posts.models import what I have, posts and comments. All right, so let's actually create some data. So here I'm going to create a post one. That'll be a post. Title will be, this is my first post. And then the body, I don't really want to get too creative here, so let's say some content here. And finally, an author. Again, this is just a name. We're not going to tie it to a user to keep things simple. But again, if this were like an actual Twitter website, we'd probably want a user model that could tie to our posts. In this case, I'm going to say, put my name here. All right, so I filled out my 3 fields. I create a post. I actually want to save that now. Again, keep in mind, if I did have some validation, I'd want to call full clean here. So I would do full clean. And if that actually didn't throw any exceptions, I would want to proceed to save. But in this case, I don't really have any validation that I really care for, so I'm just going to save it right away. Let's create a couple more posts. We have a P2. Something about donuts. And we'll say donuts are delicious. All right, let's make another poster. I don't want to be always tied to donuts here, so let's create a random person.
Homer.
What was that?
Homer.
Sorry, I can't quite hear, make that up.
Oh, sorry. Homer. Homer Simpson.
Homer, gotcha. Thank you. Homer Simpson. He is also fond of donuts, so sure. All right, he's our author for this post. We're going to say that. Let's create one more just for good measure. Always like to create 3, so we'll say November Platoon drops. And we'll say November great. All right, and this will be written by, let's see, let's say say Jose wrote that post. All right, so we got 3 articles. We're going to save them. All right, via the save method. Let's actually put some comments on there. So I'm going to add some comments, add some actual comments. All right, so I'm not going to create too many here, but let's just create 1 comment for sure. This will have content. It will be great post. We're going to tie that to, let's say post number 3. So never Platoon rock. So this comment will go under this post. So that's what I'm going to do here. Post equals P3. So that's again a foreign key. And then commenter, let's say I commented on that one. All right, same thing. We got to save this. So we'll do save. And then let's maybe do one more comment. Right, C2 will be I agree. And let's say that is Jerry. Okay. Any questions on what I'm typing up here?
Encore, if, just real quick, this is sort of a side question. Where do you have that seeds py file at? Is it in the app or is it in the, where is it?
Sure. So I just created a file that I could run inside of my shell. So I actually just put it on the same level as my manage.py because I'm going to be running it with the shell using manage.py. There is a more organized way to do this. So maybe that's something I should briefly cover. So let me actually go search for that. So something called.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is essentially your runner file, right? Like, or what would be your runner file, right?
No, not quite. It's
No?
just a file that I feed into the shell. So instead of typing into the shell directly, I just type it up in VS Code and then feed into the shell, and then it'll actually create data for me. So I guess it's kind of like a runner and it's creating data. It's not really doing any logic for me aside from actually just creating data. So it's more a seeds file than anything else. But there's something called fixtures. So I'm going to search for that in Google because Django has great documentation. So second result, so I got the first one, didn't hit it. Fixtures in Django. So this is actually the way you want to go about adding seed data. So there seems to be some redirect here. All right, so you could have default data that you want to put in, and you would add it either as like a JSON format or a YAML format. So I guess there's a few options here. So it says JSON, XML, or YAML. So in this case, let's actually try it. Let's see where this goes. So I'm going to copy this YAML format, it says. Then in my app here, I'm going to create a new folder. So again, this is part of reading documentation, but you're going to want a folder called fixtures. Fixtures. Yep. In that, I'm going to create a new file called seeds.yaml. All right, YAML is just a format. Again, this can be JSON, this can be XML, as that page said. I'm going to post what they had and kind of adapt this. So in this case, I'm going to modify the code. So post is my app, and then my model was post. The primary key I'm going to specify, and then we have some fields. So I think for post we had title, and what else did we have? We had body and author. Okay, so this is another way to do it. I'd say this is the more Django way to do it. The way I do it is more just one-off, but I feel like it's valuable to actually see the way Django kind of goes about this. So author will be what I have. So title was, let me get my seeds file back up here. So I'll actually do it both ways, but I definitely want to spend some time showing you guys how to do it this way. So I don't think we've gone over it. So my first post, something goes here, that was me, and then we have another post. And this would be primary key 2, fields would be same fields, yes. Copy this, put this over here. Elements are great. Homer Simpson. Okay, so let's just create 2 items right now. So model posts, this is posts. Okay, so let's actually figure out how to run this fixture. So where Django finds fixture files. By default, Django looks in the fixtures directory inside my app. So that's the folder I created. Again, it looks for that specific name. You can set the fixture directory. So if you want to change the directory name, you do it by adding a fixture underscore dirs to your additional directories in Django. So this, I believe, will be in your settings.py file. All right. So in this case, I think we just need to run manage and load data. And it's going to look for that fixtures file and hopefully should enter that data into our database. Again, no guarantees this is going to work fine, but let's try it. I'm here to try. So I'm going to do Python manage dot UI. And I'm going to load data. I just want to double check. Load data. I'm going to look for another resource here. Finding initial data for models. All right, this is basically what we saw before. Fixture name. All right, so we have to provide a fixture name here. So in this case, it's seeds.yaml. Okay, so from reading the documentation, it seems like anytime you run your fixtures, it's going to delete your data and then reinsert the new data. So I should be able to run this multiple times without issue. But let's actually try it. So it's seeds.yaml. And fingers crossed, unknown type because I didn't have a space. Get this word wrapping. Seeds, no seeds.
Did you put it in your migrations folder, not in your app folder?
Yes, I did. That was quite silly. All right, so that needs to be inside the app folder, but not in your migrations, because that was an accident for sure. Thanks for that catch. Hopefully that was the only issue. Okay, so it ran it, got some errors. Might need to install YAML. No module named YAML. So let's see how we install YAML. Django fixtures using YAML. See another website. All right, so we created fixtures. There's a dump data, which I'm not sure what it is.
Is it not just pip install YAML, or is it more?
Yeah, yeah, that might just be what I need to do. Let's see, fixtures. There's a PyYAML fixtures, so let's give this a try. Exploring here. If this doesn't work, I might just go back to my original scheduled programs, collecting, yada, 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 whole bunch of stuff. Okay, hopefully that's everything I need. Let's try that on. Okay, I got no error messages.
You just tried to reinstall YAML.
Gotcha, thank you. Okay, that worked. So it says install 2 objects. So again, I had 2 entries for posts and from 1 fixture. So I have 1 source file. All right, so if I actually want to see that in my database, I can. I'm actually going to use my seeds file that I was doing before. So maybe I shouldn't call this seeds. Maybe let's rename it. Just make sure rename. I'm going to call this, sure, let's call it runner. I don't know if that's the best name, but runner.py. All right, so in this case, I don't want to save data currently. I'm going to comment this out. Let's actually investigate the data that we have. So in this case, we could do something like post.objects.all, and we want to list those. So let's do for p in this query set. So again, all is going to return a query set, which is like a list, but not quite the same. Let's print out p. All right, so I'm going to save that, and then I'm actually going to. What was that?
Colon. I think this is.
Oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Yep, all right, so simple for loop. I think this should run fine, but let's find out. All right, so the way I feed this into my shell is by doing Python, then manage, .py, and then I type shell, and then I actually use the caret. So it's gonna wrap around here on my screen, but it's gonna be the file I want to feed it. So in this case, it's runner.py. So basically, it's going to dump all this Python into the shell and execute it. So if I run that, okay, notice I got my post that I inserted for my pictures. So I had 2 posts. This is my first post and the author name, and then the donuts are great post by Homer Simpson. Again, keep in mind this format is coming from my str method. So notice here my format is title, and then by, and then actual author. So again, that's why I could print it out and see something useful versus seeing something that just says post object at address, whatever. All right, so again, we went through pictures. Again, that's the more standard way to do it. So maybe get familiar with that. Again, you can insert data through Postgres itself, just going through the pSQL command line, doing it through the shell, which is the usual way to do it, or setting up pictures, which is the more Django way to do it. All right, so I'm actually not gonna keep doing pictures here. So let me go back to my runner file because I'm more comfortable there. So let's actually delete some stuff. So I don't want to have overlaps. So I'm going to do deletes. And then if I have any comments, objects, all delete. So this will actually remove all my entries from my existing database, which is what I want to do. And let's uncomment the sections that I had before. Here's my terminal, get my real estate here. All right, so uncomment. All right, so in this case, we have 3 posts that we're adding and a couple comments that we're adding to post 3. That's that P3 here. Okay, so I think Jeremy had asked about this before. How can you actually see all the comments on the post? So there's one way is just to look at all the comments. Let me add one more comment just to round this out to 3. Comment 3 will be congrats, and this will be on post 1. And let's say Jose is commenting on my post. All right, so post 1 was, this is my first post written by me, some content goes here. And I save that. Okay, so we have 3 comments and 3 posts. 2 comments are attributed to post 3, 1 comment on post 1, and post 2 from Homer Simpson has not gotten any comments yet. So we save those. Now let's actually read data or show data. All right, so in this case, if I want to see all the comments, I will do something like for cin comments.objects.all. I'll just print those comments out. Okay, but I could also do something like this. So I think this is the question Jeremy was asking. If I want to see all comments for post number 1. All right, in this case, I would get the P1 instance. So again, P1, just a reminder, is a post instance that I've created and saved. And then later on, I added some foreign key references. Oh, sorry, just one of them here. So let's say post 3. So post 3 has 2 comments on them that I have a foreign key that's tying this comment to those posts. The way we could actually reference those or get access to those is just do P3. Then we want to do comments. And those we need all here. And then print out the comment. So again, this comments is actually coming from, if I go back to my models, this related name value that I gave. So if you put something different here, then you would have a reference to that, that name over here. Sorry, I have too many files up. So P3, comments will extract all the comments that are associated with it through the foreign key, and then allow us to just see the comments for that post.
Hey, Encore, when I was creating my comments, I kind of did it like that. So I did like p3.comments.create. Is that doing the exact same thing?
So you had create here?
Yeah, and then instead of putting in the foreign key, you would just type in content and commenter.
We could try that. I'm not fully familiar with that. So let me run this and then we'll try that because I want to investigate it for sure. So let me save this, bring up my terminal again. So terminal, run my manage. Nope, that's not what I want. All right, so I got to do Python manage.py shell feed in my runner.py. And hopefully I didn't forget comments or colons or anywhere. All right, there we go. So notice we list all of the comments. It's the 3 comments, but then if we want to actually investigate comments for a particular post, we have access to that, even though, again, keep in mind, that is not a member in this model. Like we don't have a comments attribute or proper field here, right? There's no comments field here, but it's kind of like magically being created through this relationship. Right, so this is actually not like, it's not a database field. It's just kind of linking these tables together since Django kind of manages the data for us. Right, so I guess this, there's a suggestion you could do something like let's say P2, because post 2 has no comments on them right now. Comments dot create. And were you saying you just pass in the parameters for comments here?
Yeah, everything except the foreign key.
Gotcha. Okay, let's give that a try. Content, this will be donuts are great. It's about Homer Simpson's comment, and let's say I'm commenting on Homer Simpson's post. All right, so do P2 comments.create, and then do we need to save this again?
I was saving. I'm not sure if you have to though.
Create saves.
I assume we will need to save it, but we'll find out in a second. Get rid of some data. All right, so we're gonna print out all the comments for post 2. So let's actually see what happens here. Okay, I think it looks good to me. Let's run this again. Yep, looks like you didn't have to actually save it. So I assume create will create that comment and save it for us. So that's what, again, I'd probably want to read docs to verify that, but it looks like create's going to create a comment object and save it, and then establish a relationship through P2. So again, we didn't specify the foreign key here. That's coming from doing a create on the comments property on P2. All right, cool. Thanks for that suggestion. I've never done it that way. But yeah, looks like there's several ways you can go about it. This way is a little more, I guess, compact in that you tie it directly to a comment instead of having a foreign key that is kind of randomly doing it for you. But cool. All right, so I've created some content, but the key thing is I want to see this on my website, not in my terminal, right? Because the website's a little more exciting. So let's actually see if we could get this data listed on our website. So back to our original situation, we had our, in our views, we had our post list, but we actually want to list out this data that we created. So we're going to need a HTML page to do this, right? We could return an HTTP response, but that's not quite, what we expect. So in this case, we're going to create some HTML files. So if you guys remember how to do that, we got to create a folder. Call that templates. So this is something I just want to reiterate because it's easy to forget and it's not obvious. But Django kind of requires you to create a folder within your templates folder of the same name as your applet. So in this case, I need to create a posts folder within my templates folder, which again is nested inside my post folder. It's kind of silly. I'm not quite sure why that's required, but it's just the way Django goes about looking for particular files. It's going to look inside this templates/posts folder that I've created. So these are nested folders. Inside here, I could create my HTML templates. So let's say, what we're doing, post list.html. And then let's actually create an HTML file. So I have my snippet that I always use. So I'm going to drop that in here. It's base HTML. Get rid of CSS and JavaScript because I don't want that right now. Let's trash this. All right, so this is a standard HTML file I could add content to. So in this case, I'm going to want to add a list. I'm going to do, let's do an ordered list. Ordered list, sure. Ordered list, and that's going to have a bunch of list items in it. So let's just do sample article title. Okay, so right now, not using actual data. I just want to make sure that I link up my page correctly from my views. So in this case, I created my post list. Let's actually return that over here. So the way I want to do that, sorry, is I'm going to render that template. So I'm going to return. I need to actually import, remember? So render here, all right, I have that. Render, and then request will be the first parameter. then I'm going to specify the templates. In this case, it's posts, and I think I called it post list.html. So that's my template file. And then I'm going to pass, I could pass some data, but in this case, I'm not going to. All right, so I'm just going to render this page, and hopefully it should just render a sample list with a sample article title in there. All right, did that. I think I got all the steps, but let's see, views. I don't need a double return. Render, requests. All right, I think this is all I need. We'll find out shortly. All right, let's run our server. I think I killed it. So we'll do Python manage.py run server. Okay, I think our server's up. My web page is still up. All right, so we had hello world before. Let's see if I refresh. Will I get an error? Nope. All right, looks like I have a list with one item in it. Not too exciting right now, but seems like what I did worked in that I created an HTML template, and then in my views, I got that template and rendered it as a response. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, hope you guys are keeping pace. All right, so now I actually want to put some data in here, right? We don't want to hard code data because our articles might change. We might add articles, remove them. So let's actually figure out how we can add items here. So this is where we can kind of inject some Python logic. So I'm going to do these percent brackets. Everything in between here will be Python code. So let's do something like for let's see. In articles, we're doing posts. What am I doing? For post in post list. We're going to do a bunch of stuff, and then we got to ender for. So again, don't forget this is kind of required. I need to end for. All right, so for all, we're going to pass in, eventually you're going to pass in a list of all of our posts, and we're just going to loop through that post list and then create list elements for each one of those posts. Inside here, we want to, let's say, we're going to do post.title. I think that was the value. Okay, so let's save that. All right, so this post list needs to come from somewhere. It's not going to actually know like what we're referring to unless we tell it what we're referring to. So in this case, let's go back to my views. All right, so in this case, when we're rendering, we're simply just calling that page. But in this case, we want to actually pass some data. So we got to pass it a dictionary, and my value is going to be post list. Post list. And then that will have a list of some sort. So I'm going to assume that's going to be, let's just do it a different way. So let's do post list. And then I have my model that I need to bring in here. So let's not forget that. From post.models, import post, and I'm just going to import comments because I probably will need that at some point. All right, so now that I have this post model here, I could do objects and all. So this will return a query set. I can make this a list if I want to, but I think it being a query set should work just fine. All right, so this just gets all of our objects, assigns it to post list, and I'll pass that in here. All right, so I have a dictionary with some data. This dictionary will be parsed by our template, and then it'll extract the post list value, because that's what I'm passing. All right, so yep, I think I have everything I need. I'm gonna save this, no errors. So your server will automatically refresh when you update your models or your views. This will also show you any error messages. So if your server is down, it's likely because you have an error and then you want to read your terminal to kind of debug it. All right, so I think I have everything I need. Let's refresh and see what happens. There we go. These are our 3 articles. This is my first post, something about donuts, and November Platoon rocks. All things I would agree with, because this is my first post. Donuts are awesome, or yes, something about donuts. And November Platoon definitely does rock. All right, so far so good. Let's proceed. So again, we're talking about CRUD, which is the create, read, update, and delete. The creation we've not actually offered to our user yet. Like we created through development, we want to actually offer a mechanism to create new posts from the website. So we've not done the C part. We've done the R part, sort of, because we're actually reading those lists out of the database and showing the post titles on our webpage. So we're doing the R part. We got to implement the creating and updating and also deleting posts to fulfill the CRUD requirements. So let's actually go about that. So we have this post detail, which I sort of stubbed out here. This is going to take in a post ID. So that's, we have a URL, and this is going to be a parameter. So again, Django will automatically do this for us. Since we specified a parameter here, our handler here is going to take in a post ID. This name has to match this name here. Post ID. That's why I put post ID here. Okay, so this is going to be our post details. We actually want to see our post. So we'll say post equals post objects.get. And I think we're going to do pk equals post ID. All right, so we're going to use that post ID that's given to us. That'll be our primary key value. And we'll get a post. Let's just be safe and check if post is something legit. If so, we're going to return render some page. So let's quickly create a page. Go back to my templates. We'll say post detail.html. And let's get some details. So just going to copy this page, post it here, and then we don't want a for loop. We want an h1. This will be our title. So we post.title. Double curly braces for that. And then we want a body and author probably. So we'll have this h3. All right, so display our data. Again, we had a title, author, and body. Save this. And what else do I want to do here? All right, I think this is good, but we need to actually pass in a post object. So let's go back to our views. We're going to render something, so it's going to be request. In this case, our page is post detail.html. And then our data is going to be that post object that we just extracted here. We checked it that it's something valid. So we'll just do our post equals post. Yeah. Okay, maybe just for example's sake, let's actually name this something else. Notice I'm using my key and my value as the same variable. I just want to show you guys, like, whatever you name you gave it is what your HTML page is going to extract. So if I name this data instead, now I'm going to have to use data in my detail. So instead of using post, I do data. Data. All right. I think that's all we need for that. So let's go through our views. All right. So our detail is going to get a post ID. We use that post ID to get an actual post, and then we render that via the post detail template. All right. And then let's say in the case that we don't get something, let's just be simple and return post does not exist. Okay, I'm hoping that this is coded up correctly. So let's actually try it out. But we could do that manually. So if I go up to, again, Twitter is my page. If I do /1, it does not exist. Not good. All right, good time to debug. So notice I manually went to that page and it cannot find it. So something's going astray. So pk equals post ID. Maybe this needs to be ID. No, it should be pk. All right, let's try to figure this out. So
Oh, what if you put ID instead of BK?
Definitely try that. So post ID. Let's actually print some stuff out here. Let's see post. Want to see what ID we're getting. Post. Print. Post ID. Let's verify our URLs. Make sure that nothing went wrong here. So we do have that. Post detail. Name doesn't matter right now. All right. So yeah, let's kind of again debug this. So let's refresh. See if our console got anything here. Failed to load. So post ID is 2. That looks right. That looks right. All right. Post detail. Post detail. Post detail. That's right. Count this out. Let's just print something. Test out. Hello world. Oh, I think I have an issue. Maybe. Use. Oh, that's right. Okay, let's see. Let's try to run this. So we go back to soup. Post matching query does not exist. So it seems like my query is having some issues. So ID is what I changed it to. Let's change that back to PK. Refresh. This.
Yeah, it has to be something else because when I usually use ID and it works.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, I think I've used ID also. Post matching query does not exist. I wonder if let's actually investigate my database. I might have some weird values in there. So let's go back to my terminal and then open a new one.
This might be wrong, but what if you took away the extra slash at the end of like in the post urls.py?
Right here?
Like if you took away that, because I usually don't put it in it. Is it running? Oh.
No, I had my server. It's killed. Yeah, I think that slash is required. Oh, because I had a slash here, maybe. Yeah, same issue.
Okay.
Good thinking though. I think I need to check my database. So I might have bad IDs or different IDs than I expect. Let's clear this. Go to pSQL. My database name was, I don't remember. It was post.pb, post.pb. All right, now that I'm in here, I could do some queries. So let's do select star from, don't know my table name. Let's do the \d to find all my tables. All right, so I have posts _ posts. So that's what I want to query. So I'm going to do select star from post, semicolon. There we go. So it seems like my IDs aren't resetting. So remember, I ran my fixture file a couple of times, and then I just did my seeding. So it looks like those IDs aren't actually getting reset, even though I delete the items. So that's actually the source of the problem here. So ID 6 exists, but not ID 1. So that's something I might want to maybe look into later, but let's actually try ID 6. All right, there we go. This is the hello world that I had. So always be mindful of what data you actually have. Django usually will do it right, but in this case, I think using my runner file might be my issue since I'm deleting stuff and then reinserting stuff. Maybe if I ran fixtures, it would clean it up. So that might be an advantage of using fixtures. But all right, so I'm back on track. Let's go back to my templates. All right, uncomment this out. Save that, refresh. All right, there we go. That's my first post, author, and content. That's exciting. I don't want to save that. All right, let's do one quick thing. So notice that in my detail page, I'm not actually linking to anything. So let's add a link here. So if you guys remember your A tag, we'll add that link. And I'm actually not a fan of ordered lists. I'm going to do unordered lists, but those bullets better. And then this will be href. All right, so this is where I think Brendan kind of asked the question of, in our URLs, sometimes we need to have this app_name variable. And this is where we can actually use it. So we have this app name, and we also have a name for our routes. So we have post list and post detail. So this is where we actually can use it in our file, in our templates. So where were we? List. All right, so my href, in this case, I could refer to it via this, so %. All right, so we're going to use URL, and then in single quotes, I'm going to do post, and I think it was what? Post detail. All right, so this is the app name. That's the value we specified before. Then you do a colon, and then you do the name of the route that you want to link to. And in this case, we want to give it post ID. So post ID. And post title. All right, looks like we're good. So again, this post ID is coming from our folder. So we're getting a post item and then calling the ID on that. So hopefully this should link properly. Now that we have a post ID, we don't have to manually navigate through our page and get errors that way. And then this can use the post detail route. Okay, so I'm going to save that and then go back to my landing page. All right, we've got a bunch of links here. So let's actually see if we can click on them. All right, seems to be working great. All right, any questions on any of that? So one question that might come up is, why am I doing it this way? Why don't I just link it to, instead of doing this, why don't I just do like, I think I could use Twitter / post ID. That's what I want. I think that should work. Let me try it. It might not work as I want it to. Save that, refresh. Nope, I don't need that Twitter part in here. All right, so why don't I just link it this way? So if I hit save, refresh my page, if I click on this, all right, it takes me to the correct article. So why don't I just do it this way? This can work. It's not wrong, but you're kind of hard coding something here. So in this case, what if you don't want your landing page to be the ID? Like, what if you want it to be, if you want it to be post and then a number like this? If you guys can see my address bar, like what if you just want like a post inserted in there instead of just saying the number? Well, in that case, if I change like my logic in my Django, then I'm going to have to update all of my links here. So I'm going to have to add post here, and then if I have any other links, I'm going to have to add that manually. Versus if I do it the previous way that I had it, like such. Now it's mapping to this name. So again, this name can't change, but the way the URL is formatted can change. So if I actually want to do this, let's actually try it out in both ways. So I'm going to have two list items per article. The first way is going to be the more dynamic way, and the second way is going to be the kind of the hard-coded way. So let's do, what was it? Post. I'm sorry. We want to do just the ID here. Post that. All right. So I'm going to question that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What would you call the first one then? Like, what would you call the process or the
process?
Sorry, not the process, but like if I wanted to read more on like the format of how you typed up line.
Not sure. So let's try to find out. Linking template files Django. I might need to get back to you on that, Kyle.
Jinja?
What was that?
Is he talking about Jinja?
The method where I'm doing this, where I'm calling URL and then passing it.
That looks like Jinja.
Okay, is that a Jinja thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are those called helper methods?
I'm not sure actually. If someone else knows the response, that'd be helpful to me. Yeah, I actually don't know what like terminology you'd give to this method, but it's just a more dynamic way to do it. All right.
URL is a function, so you could do Django URL to get to that.
Django URL. All right, let's try it quickly. But if not, we'll leave it to a self-research topic. Showing custom converters. All right, there's going to be something you guys probably want to read if you guys want to know more about this. I don't want to waste too much time, but it is probably something worth investigating, since obviously I don't know the finer details of it. But yeah, read documentation again. Django documentation is pretty detailed and easy to parse. All right, so I'm going to do it both ways and kind of see what happens in each case. So again, I'm going to have duplicate links for my articles. I'm going to save this. I think I have everything right, so let's go back. And of course, that was not a valid one. Okay, so I have, again, duplicate links. The first instance is the dynamic links, or the more dynamic method, and the second one is more hard-coded. So let's say I click on this one, I get to my post, that works. The second one, get to my post, all right, everything looks cool. Let's say some project requirements change for whatever reason, and then they tell me, hey, actually we don't want to map just to that number, we want to have another item here. So let's say post. All right, so we added something to our URL. Notice our names stay the same, so you don't want to change the name, but your path can change. So this is the dynamic portion of it. I've changed my path. Now, if I actually go back to my page, I think my server reloaded there, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, so if I go back to my landing page, refresh, good measure. If I click this one, the first one, which is dynamic, hey, I still get to my post, right? But now if I go to my second one, page not found. It's because the path no longer exists as is, right? We need this post here. And so this is, again, just a good lesson on, you don't want to have your user know, where it's linking to. It should be automatic each time. As in, if your path changes, your link should change with them, so that you manually have to go through your all your templates and, one by one. Again, this is a very simple page. I have one link, but if I had like 40 links, it'd be kind of a little more difficult to update all of them. I might miss one. So it's kind of easier to go this route. It's a little more typing, but in the long run, it'll be better for you. All right, so I have that. I'm looking to my...
One last question. You put in a return, so it should just show there's no post ID of that. Why is that not functioning?
Could you clarify?
So you're in your if post, you have if post return render.
Oh, in my views, gotcha. Right here?
Yeah.
Yep.
So then right there, you're at the very bottom line. Why is that not firing off? Because those numbers didn't exist.
Great question. I think it's because this query is actually failing. So that's a good lesson in error handling. So I should probably have this in a try statement. And then if I do it this way, I think I should get what I want, or it gets the expected error. But I'm glad you pointed that out. I totally forgot about this. So if I do this, I think this query is raising an exception because this ID is not valid. So this get fails. And then I don't get anything returned. I actually fail on this step. And so let's say I do it this way. I think this should kind of mitigate our situation. Let's actually test it out. So let me go back to a phantom post. Page not found. Oh, because I changed my link to be post. All right, there we go. Post 2 does not exist.
Cool, thanks.
No, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I totally forgot about that, and I was doing that incorrectly. So yeah, try except. It's good practice to have that in case anything can go wrong. So in this case, queries can throw exceptions. So it's good to kind of make use of try excepts in that case. Good points there. All right, my last thing that I want to do let's go back to our README. I lost track of what we're doing. That's not what we want. Posts and comments. All right, so we did this portion where we are able to view our IDs. We created our objects, populate database with Django shell, create 3 posts and 2 comments associated with them. All right. All right, so I think we've created some comments. We actually want to show those comments now. So let's update our template. Let's format some stuff here. and add our comments. So I'm going to do a for loop inside our HTML. Make 4 comments, and again, this is how we can access our post comments. We have our data, and that will have comments on there. And this will just be, we just have paragraphs here for each comment. So this will be, what is it? Comment dot content. I should name these better. And so it's going to be inline. We'll do by parenthesis. And then data dot commenter is the commenter. All right, so that should put all the comments. So hopefully that's coded correctly. For comment and data comments. All right, I think that should be good. Let's actually test it out. Never hurts to test. So we don't want to go here. Let's go back to our landing page. All right, we have this. Let's click on donuts. Or let's click on the third one. Page 8 does not exist. That's not good either. What did I do here? For some reason, all these are failing. Don't know why. That. Yeah, I'm a little stumped here. What's going on? Detail list. That's right. All right, something has gone terribly wrong. It's always hitting my error condition. I'm not sure why. Let me try getting rid of this and see what happens. Yep. Related manager. All right, so I think my render might be failing and not my actual get. So there seems to be something wrong in my detail page here. So comment and data.comments. Let's try to figure this one out. View data post. So post.comments. Put that out somewhere. Let's try this link again. Getting updates. Anyone have any ideas here?
Did you change back your URL?
Yeah, my URL changed, but again, that should be linked correctly. I think there's something wrong with what I'm doing here. If anyone can spot it.
What did you?
Gotcha. It's right here. Debugging. All right. So yeah, I was using data.commenter, which doesn't exist. I actually want to use that on the comment. So I think, again, just to review, I think the render was throwing an exception, which is why we were all looking here. The query was successful because those articles or posts do exist. All right. Refresh. Refresh. Oh, still not good. All right, for comments and data.comments. Something.
Does the indentation matter once you remove the try and accept lines?
No, that should be fine. There's something wrong here. Data.comments doesn't exist for some reason. for comment and data. We have data.title. So yeah, if I want to kind of try to pick this up.
Well, it's saying that you can't iterate over that. So, I mean, you're only trying to show one comment, so you wouldn't be able to iterate.
Is that my issue? You're saying I can't iterate over comments at all?
Well, in the browser, it's saying you cannot iterate over data.comments. So that tells me that it's only one object.
I don't think you need parentheses in there either.
That all?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, I think you might be right. Refresh. Ah, there we go. Thanks, Brandon. All right, so yeah, I just had the wrong object. Sorry about that. So yeah, I need a .all without parentheses, which is a little different than in Python. You need a .all on the object, I think. Or actually, you wouldn't need the .all. Anyway, .all will just get me in something that's iterable, and I could get my comments that way. So looking at something about donuts, I have my comment, donuts are great. Number Platoon, we have a couple comments, great post by me, I agree, by Jeremy. Okay, I think we got that working correctly. Just want to make sure we hit all the requirements. So release 3, populate database using Django, create 3 posts, 2 comments, create HTML views. All right, I think we've completed all of this.
So it should still run fine if you put the try and accept back in. I don't remember if you did that or not.
I think I left them out, but yes. Let's add those back in because that's actually what we want. And try. Thanks for bearing with that. All right, so if we refresh, go back. All right, that works. And let's go to a phantom post, which is ID 2, I guess. Yep, page 2 is my post. All right, seems like that's working as we want. Okay, so that will take care of posts and comments. Any comments on or questions on posts and comments?
Do you know why you don't need like the parentheses on that .all there, but you need it in other places? I guess I get confused like what we're coding in at different spots.
Gotcha. So if I go back to my runner file, so in Python, you don't need the all. I guess in the parentheses, I think that's a Jinja thing, but again, I don't want to say that with authority. So I'm just going to say Jinja probably just has a different way to do it. We can maybe try Googling for it. Jinja set items. I don't even know what to search for. This person's doing that. I don't know, actually. Good question. I do not have a good answer, unfortunately. But yeah, that is curious. I would expect the syntax to be essentially the same, but for some reason you can't do .all. Let's be .all. Some other stuff you can do, this was from documentation, you can actually do some additional, I guess, sorting if you wanted to here. So I could do something like, again, this is from documentation, but dictionary sort and sort it by time if I wanted to. I would need a time parameter. So let's actually sort it by commenter. That should work. All right, so let's go back to, where were we? Okay. Right. One comment there. All right, so notice it's this way. I think if I wanted to flip that, I could do a negative. So I did something like, do negative here. See if that works. Oh, that just killed it. Sorts in reverse order. Sort reverse. That's what I want. So do I just do reverse? What I want. Not sure if this is what's gonna happen. But always worth messing around with and trying it. So attribute equal commenter. Okay, let's see if this works. If not, we'll kind of give up on this. All right, so if I sort that, will this work? Will this work? Nope. Give me some errors.
You need a comma.
Great. Nope. All right, so I don't know the syntax for that. But there, you can add additional, you know, I guess, values to kind of get your list sorted in a way that you want to. Attributes. Sort. Yeah, that should do it, but not sure what's going on. All right, I don't want to waste too much time on this, but good questions. I don't have great answers for it right now, but let's actually stop the recording and take a break.